But more importantly, I would have been giving up on myself. And like most people, I had given up on myself many, many times in the past, and I was going to finish this run no matter what. So one of the secrets to success, regardless if it's money or if it's weight loss or if it's relationships or whatever it is you've got to have a do or die attitude. Like, I'm going to get this result no matter what. I'm committed to it no matter what it takes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Workergenics Mastermind. I'm Harley Green, founder of Workergenics, and today we have a special guest, Croix, who is with Unstoppable Morning. He is a success and mindset coach, and he's going to share a little bit about his story and how he helps business owners get their mindset right so they can achieve their goals. Welcome, Croix.
Hi, thanks for having me, Harley.
So a little interesting note, Croix and I are both in the country of Colombia at the moment. And we were able to speak earlier, and Croix shared some great tips on living in Colombia with me. And so I'm really excited to have him share similar tips with success in business with everybody here today. Croix, maybe you can share a little background. Like, I know you have a very unique story coming from being a carpenter, doing some running, and then getting into the coaching. Maybe you could share a little bit about that with us.
As you mentioned, my dad was a carpenter, my uncle was a carpenter, my brother's a carpenter, so I became a carpenter like the rest of my family. And it was good for me for a lot of years, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was passionate about it, I made good money at it, it treated me well, it made me fairly wealthy, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was studying personal development, and back then it wasn't really accepted the way it is now. And so I used to hide in my car with listening to cassette tapes. It was Dennis Waitley way back in the day. And so I would listen to it in the privacy of my car when I was by myself, because people would make fun of me. Oh, what are you listening to this stuff for? And, of course now it's, pretty much mainstream. But I kept hearing the same thing over and over. The idea of what would you do if you knew you could do anything? If failure wasn't possible, what would you do? And I didn't know what it was at that time, but I knew I didn't want to be a carpenter and I wanted to move to something else. And I had heard about a guy who ran across America. And he had run from California to New York. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. But I wasn't a runner, but I thought this was the most amazing thing. And so I was like, I'm doing it. And so with 1 year of training, I'm in California to start running a marathon a day for 100 consecutive days. And then I also wanted to switch out of the carpentry career and become a professional speaker, coach, author, all of those things. So I also spoke every day. So each day, each morning was a speech to an at-risk audience, or a group that's in transition, such as Wounded Warriors, addiction centers, homeless shelters, United Way, all these amazing groups that are helping people get back on their feet, if you will. And so I speak every day, and then I'd go run a marathon that evening or that night and start the whole thing over for 100 days without a break all the way across America.
That is an incredible feat. I'm sure getting started with that, even with a year of training, there were probably moments where you were questioning what you're doing or if you're going to even be able to do the next day. Like, I'm sure mindset was huge there. Like, what kind of tools or techniques were you applying personally then with mindset to be able to do this incredible feat?
Well, on day 21 was the day that my body shut down. I had 5 more miles to go. It was already, I think, 10 o'clock at night. And I was in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And 10 o'clock and my body just shuts down. So I sit down on the ground. And my crew's over there in the RV, they're sleeping. So I'm by myself and I'm just sitting there and I'm in so much pain. I got tears running down my face. And then I rest for a few minutes and I pick myself up and I walk, I don't know, quarter mile or so, and my body shuts down and I sit down. For what should have taken me an hour, it took me 4 hours to finish, to get back to the RV at 2 a.m, to fall asleep before I even hit the bed, and to sleep 5 hours and start the whole thing over the next day. And that kept going on for days. So in fact, it was a couple of weeks before my body started getting stronger again. And through the whole thing, like, I could have called up my crew and said, guys, hey, come pick me up. I'm done for the day. But had I done that and I still had 5 miles left, I would have been giving up on my dream. I would have only probably been running halfway across America instead of the whole way. But more importantly, I would have been giving up on myself. And like most people, I had given up on myself many, many times in the past, and I was going to finish this run no matter what. So one of the secrets to success, regardless if it's money or if it's weight loss or if it's relationships or whatever it is you've got to have a do or die attitude. Like, I'm going to get this result no matter what. I'm committed to it no matter what it takes. And that was what I kept saying to myself over and over, not only in the Run Across America, but the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles training to get ready for this thing. And so it was always, I'm going to finish. So some days it was more walking than running. And some days I ran the whole thing. But it was just dependent on how my body felt, how the terrain was, how many mountains and things like that, how much heat there was. But it was always, I'm going to get that marathon in no matter what. And so on that day 21 in Las Cruces, I got to get to the finish line. And it took me 3 extra hours, but I got there. And so in life, we'll often give up when it gets difficult. It's very easy to give up. And so that's why a lot of people don't get the results they want. So especially as an example, somebody who's overweight. It's not an easy thing to transition from the mindset of an overweight person to the mindset of a healthy and fit person unless you've committed to, I'm going to figure this out no matter what. And then it's just a matter of how and how long. It's never a matter of if you're going to do it. It's just a matter of how and how long. And if you fall backwards, well, then you just got to get back up and keep moving forward. And so that's how you succeed. If you want to be a millionaire, it's the same thing. If you want to have a great, loving relationship with your spouse, it's the same thing. You've got to be committed to each other 100% and not give up.
I love it. So going from the Run Across America, how did that translate into the Unstoppable Morning? What does that look like for you?
It's almost probably 15 years now. I've been coaching people. I get hired by corporations to come and speak for an hour, and they pay me a ton of money. But I also like to work with people individually. In fact, that's my focus now. Instead of doing the corporate gigs as well, I'm focusing only on people now. Usually the people who seek me out, they're entrepreneurs or entrepreneur-like lifestyle, like sales, real estate, things like that. Those are the people that tend to find me. Although occasionally a corporate person will come into my mix. Usually it's an upper management, high-level person generally. The two types of people. One, they know that a coach gets them farther. And so it's like, okay, they come to see me, shorten my path to success. And that's what I help some people do. The other ones, they've had a level of success, but they've plateaued. They've got stuck. They know they can be doing more, but they're just not getting there. And usually this is caused by some sort of change in their personal life. Either financial problems or divorce, health problems, or just being overweight and not feeling good about themselves, or they've just succeeded so easily for so long that now all of a sudden they've kind of hit a resistance and they're like, I don't know how to get past that. And so what I do with people is I figure out what the resistance is, because it's only a resistance. It's not a sickness. That's why diagnosis isn't a great word, because it's not a sickness. It's not a problem. You don't have a problem. I don't have a problem, but we do sometimes have resistance. And the resistance is what keeps us there. And the resistance created by some sort of experience that we've had in the past. Either it is repercolated to the surface from childhood, or maybe a couple of things have happened later in life. I know a lot of men, especially men, that get into, say, their 40s, and all of a sudden they hit this rut. And so this is why some guys, they call it a midlife crisis for some guys. They'll go buy a Corvette or some fancy car or whatever. But what that really is a guy they've succeeded so much, and then all of a sudden it's just like, now what? And so there's a resistance to pushing forward, because for 20 years already, they've already pushed, corporate world or business world and, push, and they've succeeded at a fairly high level. And now all of a sudden it's like, man, I've been doing this 20 years. What is next? And so they hit a resistance.
The astronaut problem, right? They've gone to space, you walked on the moon. What else is there, right? How do you figure out what to do next?
And it was the same with me after Run Across America. And then we didn't talk about it, but I broke the world record running through the hottest place on the planet, Death Valley. So Run Across America, 1 more year of training, and then run through 146 miles through Death Valley at 117 degrees. But I knew this going in because people had warned me. When I finished my run, I was told that because of the physiological differences from running to not running, it's a very high likelihood I'm going to go into some level of depression. And it can be really bad for some guys, but I knew that going into it, so I had planned that before. It's like, so how do you plan for things like that? Well, I kept running. I took a few days off. I think I took 8 days off. And then I was running again. So I gave my body a good solid rest. And then I was running, but nothing crazy. It was like 5 or 6 miles a day. But just to get the endorphins, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all of the things that gets created when you exercise hard, to keep those chemicals in my body, because our body is a natural chemical factory. So if you're not feeling good, if you're down or if you're depressed, is the first thing you should do is you got to move. Regardless of what that means, is go out for a walk, go out for a jog, go for a swim, go join the gym, whatever. If you're not feeling good emotionally, then you have to move. And if you're overweight on top of it, that's going to suppress that chemical factory in us. And so that's even more important to go out and move. And do it to something that's realistic for your life, your age, your fitness level that you're at, your emotional state at the moment, but do something. And that makes a huge difference. But we don't plan these sorts of things in life. Like, how does a guy plan for 40 something when they hit this emotional rut, which is so common, especially for men? It's for men and women, but especially men. And so how do we plan for that? And then how do we get through it? And that's what I'm usually helping people with.
So do you find there's often some correlation or connection between people's like goal success, whether it's, financial, personal, and, business, and their physical activity?
The most successful people I know are almost always the most fit and healthy as well. Whether it's corporate or entrepreneurial, generally speaking, yeah. If you're financially successful and successful in life in general, not just money, but success in general, you're always, the guys are always fit. The women are always in great shape. It's just, they go together. Now, there are lots of people who are severely unhealthy, but they have a ton of money, and they've neglected their body to get the money and to overindulge in certain things. But as that old saying goes, is, people will, they come at the end of their lives and they'll spend all their money to get their health back, but it's too late at that point. And so if you find yourself in your 30s or 40s or 50s or even 60s and you're not healthy and fit, well, this is the time to start, because it'll prepare you for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. That's why, like right now, I'm not training for anything. I'm just training to stay healthy and fit. I'm 53. I'm bench pressing 300 pounds. I just ran 5 miles before I got onto this call with you. And so I do that because it makes me strong, so that in my 60s and my 70s and hopefully in my 80s and 90s, I'm going to be just as healthy and strong, and I'm going to be running circles around people. I lift more weight at the gym than guys that are in their young 20s, and these guys are big. Except for yesterday, I was at the gym, and there was this Jamaican guy with the Rasta hair, and it was obviously he was a gringo, so I started talking to him because he was lifting so much weight. I'm like, dude, do you need a spot? Guy had 3 plates on, so 315 pounds. He's like, no, I think I'm good. This guy just goes and knocks it out. Now, granted, the guy had probably 40, maybe 50 pounds on me. The guy was a monster. But I was like, man, that's so, and he was only like 27 or 8 or something like that. Wow. But I was like, it inspired me to push even harder to get to that weight. And because I haven't done 3 plates in my life, which is 315 pounds, but that's my current goal, is like, can I get there? I've been as high as 305. I was like, can I get to the 3 plates? And it's an arbitrary thing. It just looks good with the plates on there, but it's a personal goal. And so that's what we have to often do in life, is set the personal goals. So for example, I was speaking with somebody a few days ago. He just wasn't feeling good about himself. Former athlete, but now he was overweight, fairly big, but not monstrously big, just like really out of shape and overweight. I was like, well, the other day I'm talking with a guy, and he's not really feeling great about himself. He's a little overweight. He's kind of chunky. He used to be a former athlete, but he wasn't feeling good about himself. So I asked him, I says, what were you doing when you were feeling great? He's like, I was training for an Ironman. I was running every day. I was training every day, and I'm doing all these other things. I was successful in my business. I had a side business as well. So I was super busy and I was training. And so I asked him, I says, well, what does that mean? And he had to think about it for a minute. He's like, well, I had really big goals back then. I had a direction. I knew where I was going. The morning, I knew I was training every morning before work. Then I knew I had my regular job. And then at night, I was working on my side hustle. And he eventually started up this really big company. The guy's super wealthy now. But he's not feeling great about himself because it's the way he looks and feels physically. But now that we discussed it, he realizes that, well, I'm missing now. My company is big, making tons of money, but I don't really have a direction anymore because it's not a challenge. And so now he's getting back into physical shape. He's not going to do marathons anymore because he's a Clydesdale, a big guy. And so it bothers his joints and stuff like that. But he's like, I am going to go back and do these other sports that he talks about. It's like, perfect. And what are you going to do for business? Okay, you got to have a mission. You got to have a direction. It's what I talk about on Unstoppable Morning, is you've got to have a direction, a purpose, and you've got to know why you're doing it. And so once he realigned to that stuff, then everything becomes easy again. Then it's just a matter of waking up and doing what you say you want to do.
So how does one get in that mindset to like even start thinking about goals? Like let's say they just kind of fell into business, they were cutting lawns, for example, and they just kind of got some more customers and grew, and now they're just like in this rut. How do you like help them get started to really like get passionate again and have, get those goals?
That sounds a lot like me, except not cutting grass. I was a carpenter.
Yeah.
And so the way I did it is that I went out and I just experimented with a lot of stuff. I tried different things and I had a lot of little side business I was starting on the side. And most of them, I can't say they failed, but they just didn't prove very viable. And so after doing them for a little while, I was just like, no, you know what? This is either it's not going to make me enough money, logistics were too difficult, or I just didn't like it enough. But I experimented with all these different things. The other thing you could do too is the ideas that you're thinking about, go introduce yourself to these people and interview them, if you will, and say, you know what? I'm thinking about going into your job and I'd love to pick your brain and to see what you think about what you do for a living, what you like about it and what you don't, because it would really help me to decide if I should pursue the career that you're in. And most people, almost all of them, will be thrilled to have you, have a coffee with you and help you and give you their insight. So it's a great way to learn through other people's experiences. So as a speaker, when I was becoming a speaker, first I joined every group and club and coaching program that I could get to learn how to become a speaker. Because I was a carpenter. I had no idea how to speak in front of an audience. I had absolutely no idea. My first time on stage, I'm holding the lectern and I'm shaking and sweating so bad that they thought I was going to break the lectern because I was so nervous. And then each time it got a little easier, a little easier, a little easier. I got coaches, I got mentoring and all these other things. But then it was a matter of figuring out what kind of speaking do I want to do? Because there's self from the stage, there's speaking for corporations, there's all sorts of different ways. And even today now, 15 years later, I'm still fine tuning that to some level to make sure that I stay in my realm of work in a way that I really love. Because once it starts to get boring, that's when we get into the resistance, when we get into a rut. And I don't want to end up there because then it's just no fun and it's just a job. And if I was going to do that, I'll go work for somebody else, not for myself.
Right. So, once people have that vision, they figured out where they want to go. They've talked to people, like you said, they're in the industry and they've got the goals set. I imagine that there needs to be some kind of maintenance or there's some external forces that might be helpful to help achieve those goals and keep them on the forefront and keep executing. What kind of tips or advice would you have for people that, they've got the goals, they have their business now and they need to execute?
One of the important ways, and this is why I was saying before, that successful people often find a coach like me or somebody else, because we will either shorten the learning curve, shorten the way to success, and or keep you going in the right direction, keep the momentum, keep succeeding, getting to the next level, often helping you avoid pitfalls and problems, because it's somebody from the outside that's seeing it. It's why, like every CEO, every highly successful entrepreneurs, including myself, I have my mentors in different areas, and not only in business, but I also have them for my personal life. Like I have a boxing coach, I have a Muay Thai coach, and then I have people that are, from time to time, I'll either have a spiritual coach or I'll have a nutrition coach. If I'm dialing it in, that big guy at the gym, it turns out that he's a coach in the UK and he's just here visiting. And so we got talking about macros and nutrients, and he's like, you need to be eating more protein. And so we went over, my diet and stuff like that. He's like, no, you got to eat more protein if you want to be as big as you say that you are. And so it's always good to have a coach and a mentor, somebody to keep you there. And the other part of it is your personal relationship. If the person you're with isn't supporting you, man, does that make it hard? And if you're single and you're not comfortable being single, that'll make it hard too. So it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship or out of it, but you need to be happy in whatever relationship that is for you. And if that's a problem, then you got to figure that out too, because that will make everything more difficult.
So, people with your program, you have a lot of resources to support them. Can you maybe share more about what the Unstoppable Morning package includes and all the great things that are included when people start getting connected with you?
Yeah, if you go to unstoppablemorning.com, it's a completely free program. You jump in, you join, you'll get a copy of my book, digital copy of my book, digital copy of my journal. You get 3 training programs, and you also get a personal one-on-one call for me. For a little while, I'm doing it again. Normally I charge for that, but for this month, actually, I'm going to be doing that. And the reason for that is because I want to ask you questions as much as you get to ask me. And I want to see where people are at. and to fine tune how I create programs in the future. And so we both win from this. But your audience will get the gifts of the books and the programs and the trainings and all that. So it's literally it's $500 worth of trainings that I give for free. And the reason it's called Unstoppable Morning is because the way you start your morning will determine your day. So if you have a successful day, then you'll have a successful week. If you have a successful week, you'll have a successful month, then a successful year. Having a hard time getting that word out today. Successful year and then a successful life. And so that's the whole idea. You start with the thing you can control. What can we control? That first hour when we wake up. So you started with purpose, direction, and the reason why you're doing it. And then you'll have more success than you can imagine just by changing the first few minutes of your day.